Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Learning Data Live 2019. I'm Gretel Kinsey with Scriptorium Publishing, and I'm going to be moderating our final session for today. This session is Learning Lightweight Data Live, presented by Dr. Carlos Evia, Mark Giffin, and Alan Hauser. Learning Data Live is brought to you by Scriptorium, the content strategy experts. Since 1997, Scriptorium has helped companies manage, structure, organize, and distribute content in an efficient way. And if you are trying to figure out how the DITA model can best support your content, or you're setting up a DITA system, please contact us. We would love to work with you. LearningData.com and Learning Data Live would not be possible without the help of our sponsors, and we thank them very much and appreciate their support. I want to go over a few housekeeping items and just explain how things will work during this session. Attendees are muted during the webcast. However, we still want your input during the session. So please take a moment to locate the questions module in the GoToWebinar interface. You can type your questions here at any time during the session, and our speakers will answer questions at the end. And when that question and answer session begins, please look out for a link to a session evaluation survey that we're going to put in the questions module. We would very much appreciate your feedback on our sessions. So here's just a last look at today's schedule. And with that, I am going to turn things over to our speakers. So Carlos, Mark, and Alan, are you all there?
I am here.
Yes, hello. Hello, Gretel.
Hello, all right, take it away.
Oh, are you seeing the right screen or are you seeing my secondary screen? I think you see my secondary screen.
Yeah, we see an apple.
If your secondary screen has an apple, yes.
Yeah,
there we go.
There you have it. So now we can begin. All right, thank you for being here and here being wherever you are, because this is a virtual conference. We're going to start with our obligatory slide that introduces us. You might be asking, why do we need 3 guys to talk about lightweight data? That doesn't sound very lightweight. But when we were putting it together, we realized that we kind of wanted to do it together. So bear with us if you hear 3 different voices, and that's because we don't want you to get bored, and we want to keep some variety in the mix. When we were putting together the slide that introduces us, I don't know why Alan and Mark decided that they had to put pictures of them in their motorcycles. So because I don't have a motorcycle, I just put a picture of my daughter Sophia on the trike, and I think that's enough. But of course, that's me, the first one from the left, and my name is Carlos Evia, and I am a professor of communication at Virginia Tech, and I'm also co-chairing the Lightweight Data Subcommittee with OASIS.
And my name is Mark Giffin, and I'm very happy with Carlos's daughter on the tricycle. I am a consultant. I do a lot of DITA tools work, DITA Open Toolkit, programming for automation of tech docs departments, and that kind of thing.
Yes, and I'm Alan Hauser. That's my beloved green Vespa in the photo. I'm a consultant and trainer in technical publishing, and have the privilege of working with Carlos and Mark on the lightweight data spec.
Very good. So now let's dive into what is lightweight data. So lightweight data, and it's not really an acronym that we invented, LW data, which should be pronounced lightweight data. It's a simplified version of DITA. So I assume that people who are at this session understand a little bit about DITA. At least they have heard about the Darwin information typing architecture. So lightweight data has some of the similar purposes for structuring, publishing information that DITA, full DITA XML does. But the origins of lightweight data started back in 2011, 2012, when some of the members of the DITA technical committee said, we need to have something that out of the box, without the need for specializing, has some elements that DITA has that could be used to structure any type of information. Because as you might have seen in some of the sessions presented earlier today or yesterday, some people use DITA, lots of people use DITA for technical content, and they rely on the structured types of concept, task, reference, and others. But lightweight DITA from its very beginnings had the purpose of allowing people to structure whatever they wanted with very few elements, with very few tags. And lightweight DITA was born as a subset of DITA XML, and it was using XML tags. Around 2013, Michael Priestley, who is one of the fathers of DITA at IBM, had the idea of saying, wait a minute, lightweight DITA in XML is using a lot of elements that already exist in HTML. So why don't we make a version of lightweight DITA in HTML? And now we have two versions of lightweight DITA. If you want to use XML, if you're used to working with XML, maybe you have used full DITA before, or you came from another XML grammar, you can use XML-based lightweight DITA. And if you prefer to use HTML, or if you work in a community that uses HTML, you can use the HTML-based version of lightweight DITA. And at one point, Michael and I in 2014 said, why don't we add another flavor so people who don't want to use HTML, don't want to use XML, and are using Markdown, they can do lightweight DITA with Markdown. And that's how the flavors or the authoring formats of lightweight DITA came. And Mark later in some slides is going to introduce you to the three initial authoring formats that we have in lightweight DITA. But just to give you a quick preview, they are based in XML, HTML5, and Markdown. And by allowing this variety of authoring formats, what we want to accomplish is the possibility of having people from more than one corporate or enterprise silo to work in content repositories that use lightweight DITA. If you use DITA XML, people who want or need to contribute to your content need to be proficient in XML, or you can give them a software application that kind of hides the XML, but still they need to understand how XML works. So lightweight DITA enables cross-silo collaboration because we have authoring platforms for people who use XML, for people who use HTML5, or for people who use Markdown, and they all can make a contribution to the repository that uses lightweight DITA because all those are valid. So in that regard, lightweight DITA has a lot of common with DITA. It's unavoidable. I mean, it's in the name. When you say lightweight DITA, you have to say DITA. So lightweight DITA is DITA because above all things, it is a topic-oriented authoring solution or an authoring architecture, pretty much like DITA. It supports content aggregation with maps. You create your topics and you save them in whatever authoring format you are using. They can be on the XML version of lightweight DITA, on the HTML version of lightweight DITA, or the Markdown version of lightweight DITA. But if you want to publish them, if you want to build deliverables out of those topics, you still have to use maps like in DITA. And the maps can be authored just like the topics in XML, in HTML5, or in Markdown. And lightweight DITA also allows, in all of its authoring formats, some of the most popular and most used mechanisms of DITA, including filtering and transclusion with conrefs and kinrefs. So if somebody's very happy about the presentation, as you can hear on the background, but anyway, if you don't know about filtering, if you don't know about conrefs, but if you don't know about keyrefs, well, you can go to learningdita.com and learn more about them because those are very much essential to the nature of what DITA does and also to what lightweight DITA does with content. At the same time, lightweight DITA is not DITA. It's not full DITA XML. It's different in because to begin, like I mentioned before, we only have two content types. There's no concept, there's no task, there's no reference, there's no troubleshooting, there's no glossary. We only have topic and map. based on the idea that we want to allow authors from different communities, not just in technical communication, to structure and reuse and publish content of whatever it is that they want. One of the strongest selling points of DITA is that you can specialize DITA and create your own content types if you need. In lightweight DITA, you can, but it's not one of the strongest selling points. You can do it mainly in the XML-based version of lightweight DITA, but if you want to specialize topics in HTML5 or Markdown, that's pretty much going to be a waste of time because we want to keep these formats as open as possible. I mean, that's the nature of the authoring formats, especially Markdown. Markdown by definition is pretty open and you can write anything that you want. So constraining it too much will absolutely kill the freedom, the liberty that people who use Markdown have. And again, if you need advanced things like specialization and topic groups and branch filtering and many other advanced topics of DITA, probably you need to use full DITA XML. Alan?
Okay, thanks, Carlos. So that's a great lead in here. So serving on the OASIS DITA technical committee, there were a couple of hard things that we had to do and a couple of hard things that we see coming. The hard things we had to do is pick the dividing line between what lightweight DITA supports and what it does not support, what's left to full DITA. And specialization was one of those things. If the lightweight DITA subcommittee spent a lot of time and effort figuring out how to support specialization in lightweight DITA and building some tool support, some prototype tools, and finally the complexity of supporting specialization in lightweight DITA was just too much. So especially with the 3 authoring formats, and that's we made the tough decision to punt on not supporting specialization because lightweight DITA is defined as DITA. You can specialize particularly the XData flavor, but we're not encouraging that people specialize lightweight DITA, and that brings up the dividing line for adopters is we're already starting to see, oh, I really would like formal information types. I want to keep my task concept reference. Gee, I really like relationship tables. I want to use bookmap. Can you add these to lightweight DITA? And the answer is going to be no. The dividing line with any spec subset is going to be it's a tough line, but the lightweight DITA subcommittee is taking the stand. We're trying not to be wishy-washy when somebody approaches us with why doesn't lightweight DITA support this. Our quick and firm answer is if you need that, you should use full DITA. And I'll mention that you can achieve the simplicity of the lightweight DITA vocabulary by constraining DITA. So if you need task concept reference, but you don't want 400 element types, you just want the 40 that lightweight DITA provides, you can constrain DITA and you can make that environment with a different mechanism. What will be difficult to create is the lightweight DITA, the 3 equivalent authoring formats that lightweight DITA provides. Lightweight DITA, one really big design decision by the lightweight DITA subcommittee was that all authoring formats should be an R equivalent. So there's no requirement that your Markdown be translated to XML in your authoring tool or your CMS or any other part of your workflow. HTML lightweight DITA, which we call HData, Markdown lightweight DITA, which we call MData, and XML lightweight DITA, XData, are equivalent file formats. So bottom line, lightweight DITA is not for everybody. And you should look at the dividing line in features to figure out whether it's useful for you. But we do think it offers some powerful appeal in simplifying the entry to DITA and opening up DITA to content, to other content contributors. So go ahead, Carlos, to the next slide. Okay, and just speaking to the why lightweight DITA, Carlos alluded to some of this. The ideas percolated at IBM, and we are seeing the trend for more and more content contributors directly writing content with different areas of expertise, and you don't necessarily want to make the barrier to entry to contributing content. Learn an XML editor, learn the DITA vocabulary and features, learn the CMS. That's just it's just not realistic in many organizations. So we've already seen XML-based groups move to languages like Markdown. We'll show some examples later in the presentation. And these are not fly-by-night companies. These are some pretty big organizations like IBM and Adobe. So we're seeing a different authoring and collaboration model. And lightweight DITA really, we think, serves the needs of those organizations. And I think that's it for this slide, Carlos.
I think that's my cue. This is Mark Giffin, and I'm going to go over the 3 different formats, authoring formats of lightweight DITA. And we're going to use this old VW bus here. I hope that's okay. I'm hoping the seats don't tear your clothing, but we call these authoring formats flavors. And there are 3 flavors. There's XML, HTML5, and MData. I'll go over each one. Next slide, please. The first one is XData. This is the closest to DITA because it's XML and it uses the same element names and most of the same element names. It uses XML. Now, this is the audience for this is intended to be technical writers, people who already know DITA, people who just don't want to give up XML, and adventurous newbies. Adventurous meaning someone who doesn't mind learning something about XML. There's not nearly as much to learn with XData as there is with full DITA, but there's a lot to know. This is an XData topic, and it looks a lot like the full DITA topic. It has a different doc type up here. At the top, it's got its own doc type, which defines its structure. And someone is moving them. Yeah, that's right. Smart mouse. It has an ID like DITA topics are required to have, a title, and there is a short description here that is optional, like in regular DITA, but it's included here because it's an important piece. And we're showing this is showing an unordered list or a bulleted list. And it's basically, it's really cut down. There's only just a handful of elements in XData compared to, hundreds in full DITA. And there is just this one type, this one topic type, which is topic itself. Next slide, please. This is the map, the XData map, which is also greatly simplified. But it probably looks familiar if you know what a DITA map looks like. And there's, you should pretty much know, if you're familiar with DITA, you'd pretty much know what this looks like. I'd like to mention there are a few tools that support XData topic and map at this time, and they work. I've used them, and some people are using them in production also. Next slide, please. We're going to HTML5. This flavor or authoring format of lightweight DITA. We call it HData, H for HTML5. And it uses HTML5. There are no, we didn't add any elements. It's HTML5, but there's a certain setup to it that I'll show you in a moment. The audience for this simplified version, this lightweight DITA, HData, marketing professionals, bloggers, people who write for the web, developers who are happy writing in HTML5. There are many of them. I've met some of them. And non-English speaking people who are creating content and who are comfortable with HTML5, and they might not be with an XML format. Next slide, please. This is HTML5, and it is a lightweight DITA, HData topic. And we've added an ID to it because it's a DITA topic. The H1 tag serves as the topic, the content topic, the content title. The first paragraph tag, if there is one, is by default treated like a short description in processing. It's not required, but you could get the advantages of having a short description, if you're familiar with what that is, by having, it will just automatically grab the first paragraph, non-heading paragraph in the topic. And this is the same content, pretty much the same content as in the XData topic I showed. And it shows a bulleted list again, which is almost identical to XData, but people who are familiar with HTML should be familiar with these tags also. And there's also an HDataMap. If I can get the next slide, please. So this is a little different from an XML XData map because it uses HTML5 tags and syntax. This unordered list down here serves as the map which links to the topics that it is putting together, the same way a DITA map puts topics together. It also has an ID. It's also, this is pretty simple. And if you need to go even more simple, we would go to MData, which would be the next slide. And MData uses Markdown as its markup language. Markdown is a very, very lightweight markup language. It is plain text. It doesn't really have any tags as like HTML or XML do. And the audience for MData would be people using Markdown. And in this case, developers or programmers who dislike XML, and there are many of those. XML, well, I won't get into that, but some of them really don't like XML, but they really like Markdown. And people who like plain text, casual content contributors who can add content for you without having to ramp up on a large training cycle to learn all the things that Alan was talking about earlier, like an XML editor and what's XML and many other things. A Markdown file is much more confrontable than a full DITA file. And another audience member would be for Markdown, MData, would be authors who are using mobile devices or tablets. And again, non-English speaking people who find it easier to use Markdown than messing with tags. Next slide, please. And this is Markdown. This is MData. There are actually two flavors of MData, but they look pretty much the same. This is the flavor of MData that allows you to have a header at the top, which is something called YAML, which I won't get into, but it's a simple text format, or it's kind of another markup language that's used for things like headers and metadata. This is a way to give it an ID, the Markdown file. If you don't have that header, by the way, it's done automatically. I can explain how that's done if you're interested. But anyway, all DITA files will end up having an ID. And the first, the text there, what we offer at the beginning is a hashtag. This means it's a heading. And the first paragraph here, which is a plain paragraph, since it's the first one, that would be the equivalent of a short description. And again, we're showing a bulleted list. And in Markdown, you do a bulleted list. In this flavor of Markdown, you do a bulleted list with starting the line with a hyphen. And it's basically the same content and much easier to author. By the way, there are sort of GUI front ends for Markdown also, so it would kind of look like, you know, your Word file, very simple Word file, if you wanted to write your Markdown that way. But if you like to get down there in the plain text, that's what it was made for. Next slide, please. And believe it or not, this is a map. This is an MData map. It's labeled at the top with a heading, but with the hashtag. And each one of the items is a link to a file, another Markdown file in this case. On the first line there, introduction, that would be the display text. And the file it's linking to is franchise-intro.md. And that's how it works. It's a simple syntax. And this would be your MDataMap. Those are the formats. And it's over to who? Who's coming next?
I think I'm picking it up. This is Alan.
Take it away, Alan.
Unless Carlos wants to fight me for it. So with the three authoring formats address the idea that there are likely to be different collaborators in organizations with different skill levels in authoring tools and markup languages and different expertise, but they all have their domain knowledge to contribute. One thing we're seeing now in the area of voice applications is organizations that develop voice applications are discovering that the language and tone for voice applications has to be more conversational, has to be more personal than that for conventional printed or published technical content. So I noticed Scott Abel is bringing in a Hollywood screenwriter to do some training at one of his events because that person has that expertise. Now, you know, should somebody with expertise in that sort of conversational style. Should they be required to learn an XML authoring tool? Well, I think most companies say no, that's not realistic. So you have these, you have people with different expertise and interests, and they're all contributing to the content of the organization. And for that reason, I mentioned the source format equivalents in lightweight DITA. All three authoring formats are equivalent, and they can be combined in lightweight DITA maps. So let's see, I think we're going on to 21. We have an example of a lightweight DITA map that references a Markdown topic, an HTML topic, and a DITA topic. So that's that. We don't yet see this in any commercially available tools, support for mixed maps, but given the interest in lightweight DITA among tools vendors and among adopters, we expect to see that coming in the pipeline at the usual pace.
Now I'm back. So that's the next question. I know that you're excited about lightweight DITA and you want to use it now. You want to start implementing it in your topics and in your repositories to create deliverables and structure your content. So you want to give us your credit card so we can sell you a couple pounds or a couple of kilos, for those of us who understand kilos more than pounds, of lightweight DITA. But that's not the way that this works. So what we offer you is actually free. You don't have to pay us anything for lightweight DITA. I think I'm doing it wrong. I should be charging people for this, but no, we don't do that. We are part of the subcommittee with OASIS, which is an organization that manages open standards for structuring information. So there's no money involved. We volunteer our time to work in the development of the standard. And we have some materials that are available for people who want to take a look at lightweight DITA today, and they want to implement it into applications that they are building. If they are developers of software, or if they're authors, they can start looking at what does this thing look like. And as Mark mentioned, there are some open source and commercial tools already available that have support for some of the things that we're proposing. And we will talk about those in a few slides down the road. So here are the products that we can offer. We have a committee note, which is like a white paper that introduces the principles of design of lightweight DITA across the three authoring formats that Mark explained. We also have a list of those tools, both open source and commercial software applications that you can use today to start creating content and maps in lightweight DITA. And we have a GitHub repository for the subcommittee where we put the XML grammar files and we put the plugin that people can put into the DITA Open Toolkit to start transforming XData topics. And the URL for the subcommittee with OASIS is kind of complicated. So I put this simplified URL here, and Caitlin, Miss Heath promises that the slides are going to be saved and recorded. So if you want to take a screen capture of the URL right now, you can take a look at it, or you can just go to the recording and access it so you can see the kind of work that we're doing in the subcommittee with OASIS and see what are we doing and how we're progressing as we advance this idea of lightweight DITA. Alan?
Okay, so we're really encouraged by the early tool support that we're seeing on the screen. Certainly, the Oxygen XML folks, tend to be very fast at supporting new technologies and new standards. Lightweight DITA is not yet a standard; it's a work in progress. But we do have the formal committee note document that describes enough for implementers. And I'll speak about that in a moment. So Oxygen XML editor allows you to file new lightweight DITA topic and file new lightweight DITA map, and also integrate Markdown content into DITA maps. So there's that. There's the DITA Open Toolkit, which provides support for the 3 flavors. And Adobe recently did a demo for members of the Lightweight DITA subcommittee, where they showed us Lightweight DITA support in their suite of technical communication tools. And we were very impressed. They started with Adobe Experience Manager, accepting MData, Lightweight DITA expressed as Markdown, in the AEM, and publishing that through their enterprise, through AEM, which is the enterprise CMS. As they showed us their tool support, they had a copy of the committee note. They showed us the committee note. And they said, "We're working from this document," and we were like, "Yay!" so then they showed us Lightweight DITA support in FrameMaker. FrameMaker 2019 ships with Lightweight DITA grammar files. Grammar files is a fancy term for the DTDs, which is probably, it's like saying it's a fancy term for another fancy term, but it's the configuration files you need to author and publish Lightweight DITA content. So that comes in FrameMaker 2019 out of the box. They're positioning RoboHelp as their HData authoring tool. So in RoboHelp, you can author HTML5, which means you can author HData. So, and we have our tool support page has, from memory, there may be 10 or so vendors that are offering some form of Lightweight DITA support at this time.
And more coming.
And more coming soon, yes.
And
So,
just like, here's an example that, is that, Alan, are you going to explain this one?
oh, okay, yes, I'll start with this. Oh, and I neglected to mention in that Adobe demo, they showed us their internal workflow for public-facing content based on Lightweight DITA, based on MData. So what I'm very struck by the popularity of this document format that you see on the screen. This is IBM Cloud. So it is based on the authors write in Markdown in a vocabulary that's essentially the predecessor and motivation and inspiration for Lightweight DITA, the MData vocabulary. So IBM, who would have thought IBM would be leaving DITA for Markdown? But you're seeing it happening, and I'm seeing it happening in documentation portals like this. They tend to have a couple of characteristics. They tend to be web-centric, so they need to publish on the web, and you get the multi-device support through the browser. You can view this on your phone in a web browser. You can view it on a tablet or a desktop. There may be a print button, but it's not, it's not front and center. The output format is the web. It has this sort of navigation, this sort of page layout. Pretty simple structures, and that's one thing I like about MData. When I'm teaching heavyweight frameworks like DITA, I can't help but think, usually a title is just a title. Usually a paragraph is just a paragraph. Usually an ordered list is just an ordered list. Certainly there's a need for metadata, but maybe not pervasively so on every single element in every single document. So these lightweight formats, they address this need very well. The other trend I'm seeing is metadata as a wrapper around content, not necessarily embedded in content. So I believe tomorrow morning, Ulrich Parson will be speaking, and she's behind a German spec called IIRDS, which defines a metadata wrapper around content, but does not define the content format. So it could be anything. So there's some trends here that I think favor MData and favor lightweight data in general, and specifically MData as an authoring format. And I think we're in a good position to meet an upcoming need. So we have content formats like this. Adobe showed us their internal MData-based workflow, and yeah, we're just very impressed by the adoption we're seeing by large organizations. So Carlos, over to you.
What happened to the slide? Didn't we have a slide of Adobe? I don't know where it went.
It was a website.
We were going to show you an example of how Adobe is using MData, but I don't see that slide. It suddenly moved to a different slide. Oh, anywho, we'll see. We'll see if we can rescue it and show you later. But just like in the workplace, there's some early implementations of lightweight data. They're also happening in the classroom. And here at Virginia Tech, I have been teaching about lightweight data since probably 2016. And as the proposed standard develops, as we get feedback from people in industry and academia and early adopters, I constantly rework the description of the assignments that I give my students so they can be working in lightweight data. And I'm seeing very good results because I've been teaching data since, God, what, 2005 or something like that. And I have seen students who pretty much love it and students who are very much intimidated by it. But as soon as I start showing them the variety of possibilities with lightweight data, that they can create content that is going to be structured and aggregated into maps and produce deliverables for different channels in HTML and Markdown, that really opens up the perspective of who is going to use this after graduation. And the students really get excited about it. And I've seen some levels of getting involved with this that I normally do not see with just full XML-based data. So this is a sample assignment that I've been giving my students for many years, about 3 years now in different varieties, and I change it and I update it as we go. And here is a sample submission for this assignment, and I cannot show you the content, that's what is blurred, because it will be a violation of the standards that prevent us from sharing student work. But the reason why I'm including this is that Caitlin Heath, who is one of the Scriptorium organizers of this lovely event and web conference, was my student a few years ago, and this was her homework. So she submitted this in 2017, or I don't know, I don't remember, probably 2016 or something like that. And we were already doing lightweight data deliverables, and this is one of the topics that Caitlin created when she was working in one of those early classes that I decided to test lightweight data with. Mark, are you wrapping up this baby?
Yeah. So again, we have a committee note. We don't. There's no official specification yet for lightweight data, but we're working on it. These things take time, but we
Indeed,
do have
we are working.
Yeah, we do have a committee note that people are that as we talked about earlier, Alan and Carlos were talking about. People are implementing it already. It's pretty stable. We can't claim that nothing will change, but the committee note lays it out in detail and is pretty useful. And it's also not long. It's simple. And you could also join our subcommittee of OASIS, the Lightweight Data Subcommittee. We'd be happy to have you, and you can provide direct input. And I myself am ordering about a case of Carlos's book, Creating Intelligent Content with Lightweight Data, and I'm going to share it with my friends and neighbors. It's a great book. So, Carlos, would you like to plug your book at all, or?
Yes, there it is. And Mark and Alan and Michael Priestley and all the other members of the Lightweight Data Subcommittee and members of the Data Technical Committee were incredibly helpful, and they gave me plenty of insider information about the proposed standard. And I've been involved with lightweight data since about 2013, when this was not even a subcommittee with OASIS. And the book reflects those anecdotes and a little bit of the history of lightweight data, but then it also has very applied chapters about how to create content with lightweight data with the tools and specifications available as of today.
Right, and this is Alan. It's not just a primer on lightweight data. It's far more than that. It's the creating intelligent content part was very very well done, very powerful. So it's you can read it to learn about lightweight data. You can read it to learn about the way authoring work and publishing workflows should work, and the way authors should think about their content and implement their expertise with lightweight data.
Thank you. And I guess that's all we have.
All right.
Are
Well,
we
thank
taking
you so
questions?
much to all of you. And yes, at this point, we will now turn things over so that we can get some questions from all of you out there in the audience. Before we get into the Q&A session, I do just want to remind you, we are going to drop a link to our survey, and we would really appreciate you filling that out and giving us your feedback on our sessions during this event. So with that, let's get to some questions that we've got coming in. So one question, how do I get output from lightweight data? Surely I can't just run it through my DITA OT transforms.
Well, you can.
Yep, you can.
If you have a late model version of the OT, go ahead, Carlos.
Yeah, the OT has been shipping with support for MData for about a year now, based on the plugin that Jarno and Loberta wrote for MData before MData was a thing. And he has been very closely working with us, implementing the things that we envision and we create. And as of last October, I think, any version of the OT is shipping with support for MData, HData, and XData, because now our grammar files that we created in the subcommittee have been packaged into our own plugin that comes with the OT. So you don't have to download anything but the open toolkit, and you can start using topics in MData, HData, and XData. The support for maps, I think, in the OT is restricted.
I think it's just XData right now, XData, right?
Yes, as of today, but as we keep working on details of the forthcoming spec for lightweight data, I can only hope that the OT is going to start supporting those things.
The OT developers are extremely responsive and helpful in implementing these things.
All right, we've got another question. Should you choose to initially adopt lightweight data, however, then decide that standard data is more suitable for your documentation, how easy is it to make the switch?
Well, you basically just add your full DITA files to your map. You use the same DITA Open Toolkit and the same tools. Well, if you were in Markdown only and you needed to go to XML, then you would need to have some learning or knowledge available on how to do the XML as opposed to just Markdown. But it would be
if you're using XData, it's super easy. You just change the DTT declaration and link it to the DTT for a full data topic, and it will work just like that. Now, if you created content in HData or MData and you want to switch it to DITA, it's actually easy to do that. There's a plugin available for the OT to normalize data content. And I know that the developers of the OT are working on their new fancy registry of plugins, so you can see all the plugins that are available out there. And you can put content from an MData or an HData repository into a data map. And if you run it by the normalizer, the plugin that normalizes content, it will produce very simple full data topics that then you can modify and adapt as you need. If you decide that lightweight data is not for you and you need something more powerful, and you want to go to full data.
Right. I think the normalizing process makes it so it resolves conrefs and key refs and things like that, and makes it all at the top level, kind of easier to convert or move to another format.
And this one is, kind of related to one of our previous ones, but are there tools that move between DITA and the lightweight DITA flavors? Can we assume that a full OT is supported, for example, output formats?
Yep, you can go ahead and combine HData and XData and MData as of today. In the Open Toolkit and in XML Mind, XML Mind has it's a commercial application, but they have an open source processor called DITA or DITA, and you can transform, and your deliverables, whatever you create, will merge your topics in XData, HData, and MData, and your users will not know what came from what format. They will just see this seamless integration of content sources that produce deliverables that really look, like if they were coming from a unified source of content.
So you don't have to have a separate map for MData or a separate map for HData. You can put them all in the same map.
All right, another question. How easy or hard is it to convert from full DITA to lightweight DITA?
Ooh, that's one for Carlos, right?
Well,
Depends
here's
on
the
how
question.
complicated.
Yeah, here's the question. Why would you want to do that? I mean, I understand. Maybe you need to do it. We don't have a specific workflow for doing that. But there are ways, again, with the Open Toolkit. The Open Toolkit has transformations that can take a full data topic and transform it, convert it to Markdown in HTML5. And the way that these babies have been programmed by the developers of the Open Toolkit is that they would be pretty much respecting the structure of a data topic. So if you actually really need to do that, there are ways in which the OT will support that. The transformation types, and again, I'm assuming that the person who asked the question knows how to use the Open Toolkit or a software app that has the toolkit built into it, like say Oxygen. You can put the trans type of Markdown or HTML5, and it will transform. Probably then you will have to manually be sure that you do things according to our committee note or our pre-specifications to make it really compliant with HData and MData. But we don't have those very strict requirements yet. So you probably could do that very well, fully automated by transforming with available plugins that ship with the toolkit.
Yeah, and this is Alan. I might one pushback I might provide would be instead of thinking about converting from full DITA to lightweight DITA, think about maintaining that mixed environment, because DITA will be appropriate for some authors, for some types of content, and lightweight DITA will be appropriate for some authors and some types of content. So we fully envision, and actually you have currently with the DITA Open Toolkit, we envision environments where full DITA and lightweight DITA coexist and do so in a very seamless way.
And if you remember, the slide that had the flavors of ice cream had 4 cups of ice cream. One for MData, one for HData, one for XData, and one for full data. Because in a lightweight data map, you can reference a full data topic. So they can, again, be part of this content repository that has lightweight data and full data. And when you transform, when you create deliverables, your users will not know what came from lightweight data and what came from data. It will be there for them just because you properly link the topics in maps.
All right, another question. What are the differences between XData and full data?
Oh, should we, I don't know if we can
Well,
punt on that and say, see the committee note, but.
Well, you could go by number of elements. With XData, there are there 40 elements, something like that.
Yeah, about 40.
And with full data, there are hundreds. So there's a difference. A lot of those are specialized, meaning they're based on basic elements that have been changed in a formulaic way to make new elements and new topic types, but that's for full data. But it's much simpler. XData is much simpler than full data.
Right.
This
and
is
kind of the point.
Yeah,
from the committee note, Alan and Mark, this is what it says. DITA 1.3 has 3 document types and 189 element types. And lightweight data has 2 document types, only the topic and map, and 48 element types. So if we count the component types, we only have a few of the universe that DITA has. Alan?
Right.
Oh,
the DITA 1.0. Go ahead, Alan.
Yes, not important. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, so yeah, but now that DITA 1.3 figure, there are some specialized topic types you can get from, if you download the right version of DITA 1.3. So there's many more topic types than 3, but yeah, troubleshooting, things like that.
All right, and I think we have time for just one more quick question. During your session, you mentioned that lightweight data isn't for everyone, and you kind of talked about some groups that it might be good for, but who is lightweight data not for?
There are some occasions in which you actually need to have very, very strict structure. And let's say that you are at your company, at your nonprofit, you have this dude that has been working there for 35 years, and he is very prone to going on tangents on developing content. So if a person like that is using lightweight data in which everything is restricted to being either a paragraph or a list item, and that's pretty much it, there's a chance that you're gonna have some ugly Franken topics. So in situations like that, where you really need to have a very fixed structure, going to the constraint type of a task that has the steps, that has the commands, that has the step examples, maybe that's going to be better for that, because there's beauty in giving people something that is pretty open and is pretty flexible. But at the same time, for many organizations, that flexibility could create monsters of content that structure, very highly structured content, like DITA and other solutions was already solving.
All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up.